Hi and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at the Asahi Pentax SP1000. Now I remember being a student back in the early 80s, 1981 to be precise, and a few of the fellow students had film cameras. Some had Olympus OM1, OM10, and a few of them had Pentaxes, which they bought into class for certain reasons. And being a student on a grant at the time, as we probably all were, I couldn't afford a film camera. And it was quite a few years until I was able to afford a camera. But by that time I'd got a job and my interests had changed to cars. And that is still the case today. And I'll show you my car now. Now I did get into photography again, and I started to buy some quite nice cameras. I mean, I had Canon EOS 1V, and I also had a lovely Mamiya 7 II, and I sold that a few years ago, and I certainly wish I hadn't have done so, because I'd love to replace it now. I'd probably have to pay twice what I sold it for. Anyway, I still shoot a little bit of digital, but most of the stuff I own now are analogue cameras, and ranging from 35mm, a few medium format cameras, and to some point and shoots. And part of the progress of this channel is going to be shooting with a lot of those film cameras. And I'll also include some digital work, probably using old analogue vintage lenses. So that's enough of me waffling on. I'm going to go through the camera, and then later on I'll show you some images I took with this camera on its first outing. The original Pentax Spotmatic was introduced in 1964, and this SP1000 is a derivative of the Spotmatic, and it's a stripped down version, and the only real difference is the absence of a self timer. The SP1000 replaced the SP500, which had a maximum shutter speed of 500, whereas the 1000 has, as you guess, 1,000th of a second fastest shutter speed. However, the Pentax SP500 also has the 1,000th of a second shutter speed. You just have to go past the 500 mark to reach it. It's just not shown on the dial. So this was the budget Pentax at the time, and it sports a M42 mount for the lens. Now I purchased this camera about 2 or 3 months ago for £22, but unfortunately it didn't come with the a Takamar lens. It came with this Pentax lens, and I must say it's not a bad little performer, to be quite honest with you, and you'll see that in some of the shots coming up later at the end of the video. So let's have a look at some of the specs of this camera. Here you see the ISO dial, and to access that you lift up and turn. And it has a lowest ISO of 20 and a maximum of 1600 ISO. Also on the top here you can see the shutter speed dial, which goes from bulb and then 1 second all the way up to 1,000th of a second. Over here we have the film rewind, and also an indication as to what sort of film you've got, whether it's colour, black and white, or for some reason something to remind you that the camera has no film in it. As you can see, there's no hot shoe with the camera. However, you could get an attachment which would act as you'd expect as a cold shoe, and it has two flash sync ports here, one X and one FP, and the shutter speed is synced to the flash at 1/60th of a second. In order to open the back of the camera and to insert a film, first of all you need, as usual, is to pull up the rewind lever, and that gives us access to the back of the camera. So the film slots in here and is pulled across and inserted into here, and then you wind the film on to load it. Once you've pulled up the back release and loaded your film and closed, the film counter always sets back to 0. Now pretty much everything about this camera is mechanical. All the shutter speeds are mechanical, but it does have two cadmium sulfide light sensors which are center weighted, and I suppose hence the name SP for Spotmatic. It used a PX400 mercury cell battery, which obviously are no longer available anymore. So what I decided to use after a little bit of research is use a wean cell. Now they don't last very long, and I did make a mistake of not taking a spare battery out with me when I went on the first shoot with this camera, and for the first half of the film, which you'll see, I had to use a little bit of guesswork because I didn't have a light meter with me either. So in order to use the light meter, which is a moving needle, which I'll show you a picture of now, first of all you set your aperture. In this case I've got it set at f11 there. So you wind on your film, at least this is the way I do it, and on the side here you've got a switch which you push up, and that, as you can see there, closes the aperture down, and not only does it give you a depth of field preview, it also sets off the light meter reading, and once you adjust your speed or your aperture, then once the needle is in the center, you've got the correct light camera settings. So let's have a look at that. Let's have it wound on. So let's click that first. So we'll wind on, then we'll push up the shutter, so the switch here. So you've seen it's closed down, and then once you take the picture, the aperture opens back up and this switch drops back down. For the second half of the pictures I shot last week, I used the light meter, and it seems to have worked very well, to be quite honest with you. And as I say, you can have a look at some of the pictures very soon. Now, as I say, this camera didn't come with a Pentax SMC lens, but it did come with this Pentacon, and it does give some quite sharp and decent results, to be quite honest with you. I used an Ilford FP4 Plus film rated at ISO 200, and I developed it in Rodinal 1+50, so you can see the results, as I say, in a short while. What else can I tell you about the camera? It weighs just over a pound, about 1 pound 1 ounce, 2 ounce. So it's a reasonable hefty camera to carry around. As you can see, I haven't got a strap for it, but I will be getting a wrist strap soon. The one thing I did have a little bit of trouble getting used to with it, but it didn't take me long to get used to it, is the viewfinder is a pentaprism with a Fresnel lens and a micro prism. Most situations focusing was fairly easy, but there were some instances when shooting plants and grasses and trees at a distance, they all seem to mess up the view of the focusing prism. But I soon got used to it, and as with everything, you get used to using it, and then it's almost second nature. So I've shot one roll of film through it, which was very enjoyable to do, and I'll be shooting a lot more through this camera. I think this is an absolutely great camera, and one of the bonuses for me is that it's pretty much all mechanical apart from the light meter, so there's no electronics to worry about, and even if the cadmium sulfide cells fail to work in the near future, you've still got a very usable camera with an external light meter or the Sunny 16. So would I recommend you get one of these? Now, yes, all day long, and for the price I paid for it, £22, I don't think you can get much better than that. So without further ado, let's have a look at those images.